Hi there. Somebody on the Dirtywave Discord suggested that I share what I know about time stretching on the M8, especially really extreme time stretching that is a little farther than people usually do with drum loops and stuff. So I'm going to try to do that. And there are several good videos on YouTube already about time stretching on the M8. So if this explanation doesn't work for you, go watch one of those. They're good. So first of all, we're going to start off with this sample, time stretching. The really sexy male voice saying time stretching there. And the kind of standard trick for time stretching on the M8 is to loop over a little window of the sample and then advance that window along. That way you don't change the pitch. You just kind of shift this little window or grain or whatever you want to call it that is audible over time. So here's a pretty extreme version of that. Okay, so I stopped it. We just got to the S in time stretching, so that was going to take a while. And that's pretty extreme, and I don't, normally you wouldn't ever want to go farther than that. Well, let's back up and talk about how that works. For that, we have an instrument that has a play mode. Really, any of the looping play modes work. I tend to use the oscillator one. Sometimes the ping pong ones are interesting, but you can experiment with that. You want your length to be pretty short, usually less than 10, but it depends on the tempo and the sample and your preference, of course. So that's the length of the window that we're going to be advancing through the sample. And then on your LFO page, I'm using an LFO here. You could use an envelope to do the same thing. And you want to advance the loop start parameter through the sample. And so the frequency here is 15 phrases, 15 steps, so almost 16 phrases. That's a pretty ridiculous stretch there. But what we're doing is with the ramp up, we're slowly ramping up that loop start parameter for the instrument. So we're moving that window, just inching it forward over the course of almost 16 phrases. That's kind of the standard way people do time stretching. If you want to go really crazy, tables can run for a really long time, longer than LFOs can. So maybe you want to use a table, an instrument table, to advance that window instead of an LFO. And so here's an instrument that does that. And it has no LFOs, but it does have an instrument table that's running every step, I think. Step, right? Yeah. So every step it's going to, let's see, it's going to advance the loop position by 1. And so let's see what that sounds like. It sounds kind of janky. There's a step. You can hear each one of those 250 steps in there. This one's even half that speed, but done the same way. So you can really hear it here. So the reason that this version doesn't sound like the LFO version is that we're advancing this parameter that only has 256 steps. And apparently, not surprisingly, the M8 modulations are smart and they work at a finer resolution than we can get to directly. So to work around that, maybe you want to use a table to advance in chunks and then an LFO to smoothly interpolate between those chunks. So here's a version. And there's some math here that is you'll get wrong every time, and then you'll fix it. At least that's what I do. So this instrument has a table that is running every 2 phrases, and every 2 phrases it looks like it advances the the loop position by 16 or 10 in hex, and it triggers the first LFO. So the first LFO, remember we're stepping up by 16 every 2 phrases. And in this LFO, over the course of 2 phrases, it ramps up that position by 16 or 10 in hex. So it's kind of filling in the gaps that the instrument table increment is leaving. So it should sound just like this one, except without the stepping. Okay, so that's pretty smooth, and that instrument is every 2 phrases it's advancing by 16. So to get to 256, the full value, well 255, but you know what I'm saying. It will have to do that 16 times, so that's 32 phrases long, which is kind of ridiculous. Could you go farther? Yeah, you can slow the tables down a little bit more. But the big slowdowns would come by advancing in the instrument table, advancing by smaller chunks. Now there is a little glitch every time you change that chunk. I think it's because you're repeating a value at the end of a chunk and then at the beginning of the next chunk, but I don't know how to get around that with what we have to work with. So you can make them even slower. They'll be a little glitchier, but you know, if you want to be ridiculous, there's plenty of room to be ridiculous. There are a couple ways to clean it up a little bit. You can smooth it out with a little reverb, and that kind of glosses over some of those glitches. And sometimes you'll roll a little off the top end with the filter or EQ and get rid of some of the little tiny pops. So that's what I know, and probably enough to go and do some really weird stuff with. One weird thing that I've been playing with lately is when you stretch it, you can use the next command to play it on the next track, but also change your length a little bit. So you have 2 of these playing with slightly different window sizes, and those kind of interact in fun ways sometimes. So check this out. And so that I'm totally going to resample that and use it in an ambient track eventually. So that's what I know. Go and be real weird with it. Thanks.